Hey everybody, and welcome to Difference Makers. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel in Trussville, Alabama, and today we are continuing our series on writing. I have just finished our newest book from Ironworks Media. This one is called Firebrand, and we're taking this opportunity to encourage and instruct those of you that would like to write a book yourself. I hear from a lot of the different people that we've got some practical advice for you here. But let me first begin by reminding you about Ironworks.media. The new book is out. It is the second release we've done this year, which is by far the biggest thing we've done at Ironworks.media. Out there, we are building the premier Christian resource network for Calvary Chapel out there. We have books, podcasts, videos, conferences with all of the sessions and workshops and everything. And we've got even Bible studies that go through large swaths of the Bible. It's all out there. If you download our mailing list today, you can get up to date on all the new releases that we're doing, as well as download 2 free ebooks right away. And of course, you can pick up Firebrand. It's available there at ironworks.media. And if you want to find out more about the church, you can go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. Well, we're continuing this series, which I'm calling We Need Your Book. And as I said last time, I have written several books at this point. We've released 5 of them through Ironworks Media. I've written 3 others and several other things. So I kind of hope I can help somebody along that would like to be in this world and in this process. As I said, I kind of crossed over a line somewhere where we went from being, I'd like to write books, to, oh, now I write books. It's just what I do. And I hope what I give is helpful because there is just so much advice out there on writing right now. If you go on YouTube and you search writing advice or TikTok or Instagram, you are just going to be inundated, flooded with this. You go to the bookstore and look at books on writing, and it can all just be too much. So hopefully this can be a way of just consolidating it. I didn't really go through every book I have, and I've read a ton of books on writing. Believe me, I promise you I've done it, podcast videos, the whole 9 yards. I think I paid for a seminar one time, which was a bad waste of my money. But look, I'm going to put it like this. This is what has helped me. I am not famous. I am not making a bunch of money off of this, but I have crossed the finish line 8 times, and this is what has been helpful to me. And I want to remind you that this is within the parameters of what we discuss here, because on the podcast, this is all about motivating and inspiring you to live the life that God has called you to live. And if God has called you to write, if He's put that love in your heart for you to write something for the church or for the world to point them to Jesus and glorify God and just make life a little more wonderful for people, then you need to treat this like a spiritual thing, and we're going to give it that kind of spiritual attention. And as I said last time as well, even if this is not your calling, hopefully through this breakdown, it'll show you the way that you ought to approach whatever God has called you to do, with some specificity, with some practical advice, and also with some spiritual motivation and know-how. Now, part of the problem with this, though, is there are many who I know who they want to be writers, but what they have become is, by absorbing too much advice, the only thing they know enough about to write about is writing advice. They become experts on writing rather than writers. And so before we begin and get into some specifics here, the overarching theme of the day is you need to be a finisher. That trounces everything else. Every piece of technique, every story breakdown you've heard, every way of outlining, all the references and formatting and page numbers and publishing process and indie versus traditional publisher. Forget all that. People who finish books are the people who publish books. People who write books and finish them are the ones who become writers. And that is the best advice I can give in anything, whether we're talking about business or marriage or ministry, is to finish the things you start. I've known too many people who play with their book. They play with their idea for way too long. I've been in writers groups before, and one of them, I remember there were several people who would spend forever, years, writing one story. And then they would finish, and I would say, congratulations, what's next? And they say, well, I'm going to go through it and rewrite it again because I think I'm a much better writer now. And then they spend another 2 years editing the one that they just written. And every time we come, they're just telling the same old thing. Or people that finish one, but then they spend forever editing it and trying to make it perfect. And then they can kind of sit around like, oh man, when this is ready, this is going to blow everybody's mind. Maybe you've known guys like this in seminary, Bible college too. Like, once I start preaching, there's going to be revival everywhere. None of those guys know what they're doing, or athletes that are like, where do they get a load of me, man? And well, those people are in every domain. And the best writing advice I can give you is to finish. And in fact, the best writing advice you're going to get is the kind that is going to push you across the finish line. If it helps you, then great. If not, then leave it aside. You can learn more through finishing a book than anything else. You learn more through that first completion, writing the end, than all the books and all the Masters of Fine Arts and all the everything else. And that's true for all sorts of things. You learn more from preaching for a year than you're ever going to learn in seminary. You learn more from that first marriage counseling appointment than you ever did in your psychology class or whatever it could have been. You've got to finish. And once you finish, you're ready for the next one. And the joke about this is once you finish a book, you have become a better writer than the guy that wrote that book. So you go back and read it and you just cringe like, oh man, look at what I was doing. But you're always going to feel that way. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. That just means that you have improved. And it's like the only way to improve as a painter is to finish paintings. The only way to improve as a writer is to finish writing. Every iteration is a level up. You are leveling up as an author. And you need to determine that you're going to worry about that more than any particular technique. It's like guys who want to invest. And they don't invest, they don't have any money, but they have very strong opinions about what you ought to invest in, and index funds and crypto, and so, well, how much have you made? Well, nothing, but I know all about it. Not interested in that advice, just personally, you know what I mean? It's kind of like what's more important than what you're investing in is the fact that you are investing, or what's more important than which exercise technique you're using is that you are exercising. I would say in the same way, worry more about the book you're writing than making sure you're getting all these technical matters correct. So I've got, 5 pieces of advice here on how to actually go through the process. Last time was all about pre-writing. Last time was all about taking an idea and preparing yourself to actually write chapter 1 and begin and write that first word. For what it's worth, I have written so many first paragraphs. It's not as inspiring as it sounds. Like, oh, it's just going to go from here. Now you're probably going to write that and it's going to stink and you delete it and you start over again. But here's 5 pieces of advice that you can take with you. Number 1, rely on your outline. If you followed the advice from last time, you probably have an outline ready to go. And if you're following from that, you need to rely on what you have written. I have found that while you are writing a book of any kind, fiction or nonfiction, biography, theology, whatever it might be, knowing what you're going to say next can be the hardest part. If you get stuck, figuring out what happens next is very, very difficult. The outline helps eliminate this problem. You know, for fiction, you know the next thing that's supposed to happen in the story, just kind of connect the dots, you know. And in nonfiction, if you are trying to build to a certain theme or a certain argument, what's the next piece that needs to be added? Have you done that? Sometimes I'll go through a section of a nonfiction book and I'll be like, man, there's really not much here. But really what it is there's nothing new to say on that section. Just end it and go to the next one. And your outline will help you with that. This eliminates the problem of the trouble starting. And especially if you got that mini outline, you know, that bullet point list. If you can't write a complete sentence yet, just bullet point where you want to go. Where do I want to get with this? Just kind of getting the juices flowing, getting the fingers moving on that keyboard. Or if you're one of those, you know, mega dorks that still writes with a pen and paper, then yeah, go right ahead. You know, guys that buy like fountain pens and quills and all that, go for it. Knock yourselves out. But it's about getting moving. Mini outlines, even mini outlines are great. Rely on that to tell you what comes next, almost as if you're being your own boss. We'll talk more about that at the end, about separating yourself into different categories. So rely on your outline. Number 2, set practical targets and goals for yourself. There goes Pastor Tyler again, talking about goals on the Difference Maker Show. Yes, I'm a big fan of that. I'm also a big fan of setting targets for writing. And if you're not familiar with this, I'm going to just let you know. Writers tend to talk about this in terms of how many words they have written. Not so much, I'm going to write a section, I'm going to write a chapter, I'm going to write this percentage of the book. No, you just say, how many words am I writing today? A typical paperback book has 250 words per page. So you can kind of break it out from there. If I'm not mistaken, Firebrand right here was 63,000 words. So I'm not going to mess up probably going to mess it up. You can see it's about that thick. Desolation of Israel was closer to 100,000 words. So not quite twice as big, but pushing it. So in that process, how much are you going to write? Typically, people will say that about 250 words is a good target for a particular writing session. I find that to be very low. I found that if I can get cooking, I can write as much as 1,000 or 2,000 words at a time while I'm writing. Although I do think, since I've been, like I said, I've been doing this for so long. I've been writing sermons. I've been writing, papers for school. Been under the gun every week, multiple times a week. I know how to just get stuff down on paper. So I suggest something reasonable, something like 500 to 1,000 words to start per day, 5 days a week, whatever it is you want to do. Set yourself a goal. You know, by this date, I want to have this many chapters written, and that means it'll be about this much, about 3,000 words a chapter, let's say. So how many is that per day? And then, work backwards. We talk about this a lot. Set those deadlines. When you're writing a book for yourself, unless you've got a contract from a publisher, which I've never had, you have no external deadline. So you need to set an internal deadline that you are going to follow. Reduce the number until it's manageable for you, and then raise it as you go along. I believe in hard deadlines. I'm saying this is going to be done by this date. There was one time where I announced when something was going to be ready before I finished it, and that really helped me get along and get it done. Firebrand was not quite finished, but when we were finishing the end process, somebody said, hey, I'd love to take the time in November and give you a chance to promote it somewhere. Well, that gave us an external deadline where you better sit down and finish this book, Tyler. So do that for yourself. Set a target, set a goal, try to hit it every day as best you can. The more you are in it, the more you're writing, just simply enough, the sooner it'll be finished. Number 3, I made this point. It says, make time by canceling stuff. Very sophisticated sounding. I will tell you the most common question I get when people see that I've written books is, how do you find time to do that? Number one question by far, how do you find time to do that? And there's really not a good answer to that question. I don't know what to say, really. Like, I don't know. It took a long time. Desolation took about 18 months. This one took, all told, about 7 years of, working sporadically on it. Some of them were faster than that. I think the fastest I've ever written a complete book is in like 4 or 5 months, at least before we started editing. So I don't know where you find the time to do that exactly. But as I've thought about it, there's some things that I tend to say. And put simply, I write when other people are doing other things. There's no judgment in that. There's no like, well, if you could just do such and such. No, I mean, I'm not saying that it's better than other things, but when other people are going out, hanging out with friends, I'm at home writing. When other people maybe would be sitting down and watching the game, or when other people would be playing video games, or working in the yard, or building out their house, or starting a business. I don't know. I'm writing. That's what I do. I like to do this. I enjoy the process. I enjoy going through it. So it's not a burden for me. And if I can make it real practical for you, what I usually do is I turn on the game of whatever sport. I will either mute it or put it down real low, and I'll write. So I can kind of half brain look at that and looking at this, and then sort of get moving doing it that way. I stay up late. I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person. I would like to be, but I'm a night owl. So it's nothing for me to stay up till, seriously 1, 2, 2:30 in the morning writing. And that's where I find the time. I do it when other people are doing other things, like, sleeping. So you need to find the time. You need to say, what else am I doing that I could be writing instead? If it's important to you, if it's something that's important to you, you've got to get rid of other things. So if it is watching the game, college football season, is nothing to watch 6 or 7 games a weekend, right? Especially with the World Series going on now at the time of recording, and basketball season just started. Well, you need to do less of that. If it's listening to music, I love to listen to music while I write. Some people find that hard to do. And if you're just hanging out at home, some people, they get home from work and they just want to be done. Well, that's the time that you need to redeem for writing. And if you start thinking of it as something that is fun and not a chore, it won't be so bad for you. I'm just going to say, if you really want this, there's no disrespect and no shame if you don't want to. Not everybody wants to. But if you want to be a writer and complete it and have a book in your hands that you've written, you got to make time. You got to cancel stuff. You got to say, no, we're not going to that. No, I can't make it tonight. No, I'm not going to watch that. I know I'm tired, but I'm going anyway. Make the time. It's that simple. And then people will ask you, where do you find the time? And you'll be like me, and you don't have a good answer for it. The fourth lesson I'm going to give you about the actual writing process itself. Writer's block is a secret code. Writer's block is when you are staring at the page and you have no idea what to write next. You just can't get it going. Most often we say this is when the page is blank and you don't know where to go. I believe outlining will help you with that. But writer's block is when you just don't know what to say. And I'm going to break this down into 2 kinds here. The first kind of writer's block is when you know what comes next, but you just can't phrase it right. And I know that sounds silly maybe to somebody that doesn't do this, but I will be stuck up for like an hour on just how to phrase the first sentence of a paragraph that I know what it's supposed to say, and I just can't phrase it. And this is what I like to say. This is just a hardware issue. This is just the machine is cold, the engine, it has not been started for a while, and you just need time to warm up. Write something terrible is what I would say. Sometimes I'll just write in brackets, first sentence, and then go from there. Or bracket, first paragraph, and then go from there. And just start the juice flowing somehow. That's the best way to get over writer's block. I guess you'd call that muscling through it. This is when you know where to go, but you just can't get there. You just can't get the words in your mind. I understand that, but pretty much that's the best thing you can do is to fix the hardware. Get the muscles moving. Get your fingers moving, your mind going. But there's another kind of writer's block, which I have found is more common with me than knowing what to do next, because I outline so deeply, as I said. I pretty much always know what's supposed to come next. And it's when I can't get up the gumption to write. This is the second kind of writer's block. This is when, for whatever reason, I was doing really well. I was pushing through the book. Things were going fine. And I just can't get up the gumption to do it. I'm not motivated. I sit down and the thought of writing again is like, I don't want to do that, which is silly because it's the kind of thing I like to do. I see it as one of my favorite parts of my life. I love having these things that I can point to and say, I did that. So what is it? Here's what it is when I say it's a secret code. Writer's block is your subconscious telling you that there is something wrong with what you've already written and you can't move past it. I have found that if I cannot get up the energy to write, it's probably because the last thing I wrote is not ready to be passed on, or the next thing I'm supposed to write is not prepared to be written yet. So it's not at the stage where I can just sit down and write it. I'm going to have to break it down and re-outline. I'm going to have to reevaluate. I'm going to have to make some decisions. Writing is not really making a decision. Writing is just filling in what you've already decided. But if there comes a point where you have to make a decision on this manuscript now, I have found that I tend to avoid it by not getting up the energy to do it. And this is not fun. When you've got to sit down, I'll tell you a story. When I was writing Desolation of Israel, there was a section where I had taken what was one chapter and it had become 3 chapters. It was tens of thousands of words, like the length of some entire short books. And I couldn't get motivated to work on it. I couldn't get motivated. And I was like, I don't know what the problem is. And the reason was it had spiraled way out of control because I had outlined badly. I had taken this thought that I thought could be said in short, but it turned out, no, I wanted to write more about that. So what I had to do was break it down, break this into pieces, figure out where does this block go. It's a long, obnoxious process that doesn't feel like writing. I don't know what it is. It doesn't feel like this process that we've been going through, and it's not fun, but that's your body's way, your mind's way of telling you something's not working. And if you can just recognize that say, when I feel like this, it means that something's busted in here, then you can sit down and say, today we're not adding anything new, we're just fixing what's already here. And that leads into point number 5 of the writing process, which is that nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. If you can remember that while you're writing in this early phase here of just getting the first draft down on paper, if you remember nothing is permanent, you can just relax. There's no need for you to stress about each and every sentence. There are some people, you hear stories about famous authors that are like, every word was carefully chosen. Yeah, okay, maybe later for him. But for me, it's like, just get down what you want to say. Just get it down on paper. We can worry about it later. Just get down what you need to say. Yeah, as a pastor, as a Bible student, I have to do this sometime. I'm not feeling inspired from the Lord to make this sermon. So what do? I just start writing it. I just start verse by verse in that thing. How do I explain this verse? Well, here's what this verse means. Here's what this verse says. And then eventually the juices start flowing and so on. You got to delete as you go, maybe, but you can't let this become so serious in your mind. My friend, I have deleted thousands of words out of books before. Just telling that story about Desolation. To fix that, I think it ended up being 14,000 words I deleted from that book. That's a lot of writing. That's a lot of ideas. And it wasn't just, take this section and delete it. It was take this 1,000-word section and reduce it to 150 words. That's not easy. And that is not fun because you're having to see sentences that you really kind of like go out the window. But if you remember that nothing is permanent, it helps you not become so serious about it. Some people, they take everything seriously, especially like if you feel God has called me to do this. Great. But you can't be having that mindset all the time. You need to have a sense of humor about your work, a sense of humor about your ministry and your life, and certainly about your writing. If this is like the thing that is going to change the whole world, then of course you're going to get stuck over every word. But if this is just the next thing I'm working on, well, then you can just get about it. So those are those 5 lessons for you on the actual writing process, which is to rely on your outline. If you haven't outlined, you don't know where you're going to go next, and that can be tough. Number 2, set targets and goals. You need to have something tangible that you're going to accomplish every day or close to every day on your book, or you're never going to get there. Number 3, make time by canceling stuff. Where does the time come from? You've just got to figure it out. When you would normally be doing something else, be writing instead. Number 4, writer's block is a secret code. By that I mean you are either entering in a section that you don't know what to do and you need to go back and outline it, or something's not working in the structure of your project and you're going to have to take apart and figure it out. Number 5, nothing is permanent. You can delete anything and replace it at this stage of the game, so don't treat it like you've just written it in blood when you're writing down a chapter. Because, as I said at the beginning, coming back here at the end now, finishing is the most important thing. This first draft is the hard part. The rest of it is really not that difficult. Once you write it, then you can fix it. This is what I say all the time. Once you write it, you can fix it. If I write a sermon for Sunday, if it's on paper, I can fix it. If it might not be what I want it to be, but I can fix it. If I finish the manuscript of this, I can fix that manuscript. And this is true about so many areas of life, but we're talking about writing. Lots of people have this strange idea in their mind, and it's probably because we spend years thinking about finally writing that book, finally finishing it. And once you finish that first draft and you write the end, there's such a sigh of relief that comes where you go, oh, I'm done. But it's not true. And if you remember that that's not the end, then you won't stress so much about it. You can just say, all right, let's let it be what it is. Let's let it exist first, and then we can come back and we can tinker with it. It is on paper. It might be a giant stinking pile of garbage, but now we can make it worth something. I do editing as I go. I like to kind of reread where I've been before I start the next session, and that's a lot of, oh, that word doesn't work, or let's add this instead. But that's really not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having a finished stack of papers or a finished file on your computer that you can now go into and fix it. And this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, but I'm going to hit it a little harder now. You kind of separate yourself into different jobs. If you think of yourself as the one I've got to construct this masterpiece that is going to change the whole world, worry about that later. When you're daydreaming on your own time. You need to think of yourself as different people, like a movie studio maybe. You've got an idea guy. The idea guy's job is to come up with the idea, flesh it out, and then pitch it to yourself, right? Is this any good? And then you look at it and you evaluate it, as your own editor, and you say, this idea stinks. Then you throw it back in your own face. But if you think of it, the idea guy, now you've got the actual writer. And the writer's job is not to make it the most glorious thing. No, the writer's job is to take the idea that was given to you and then make it happen. Make it be a full story. Now we're not dealing with an idea. Now we're dealing with a script. Now we're dealing with a book. Now we have a manuscript. And then that person hands it over to the editor guy, and his job is to say, oh man, this terrible piece of garbage. Let's see if we can make something out of it. If you can segment it in your mind like that, it can be very helpful. And that attitude helps as you're writing because you go, fixing it is not my job. Making this perfect is not my job. Making it exist is my job. Making it complete is my job. We're not finishing, as I say sometimes, we're completing. I will complete this draft and I will let somebody else finish it. If you have it in that mind, if you treat it like you're just writing a commission that you got from somebody else and then you're going to hand off to somebody else, that mindset can be helpful. Because now it's like, well, this is just another job. Let's just finish the job and get on to the next one. I have found that very helpful for myself, that I didn't come up with this idea. I'm just writing it, and then I'm going to give it to somebody else. And then when you're the editor, you can go, I didn't write this. It's just my job to fix it. And then when you hand it off to the publisher, and his job is, well, here's the product. Let's try to sell it. And then maybe behind all of that, that's when you can say this thing is going to change the world. But we got to be blue collar about it as we're going through this process, not daydreamers as artists can tend to be. I could talk about so much more advice that could help you as you're writing, but as I've said again, finishing is the real key here. There are so many people who have an outline, who have a chapter written, who have a rough draft. My writing advice to you is finish it. I was just at a conference, the Calvary Chapel Mid-Atlantic Conference in Virginia, and I had the books out there, and everybody was so supportive and so great. But I had about a dozen people tell me about some book idea that they're some stage of finishing, and to all of them, my word was, finish it. Just finish it so that we can fix it together. And maybe someday this will be part of Ironworks Media's contribution to the world, as we can do the editing for you. But right now, I want you to be able to take this seriously as a calling from God that He is going to use for His purposes. We need your book. We need it. We need your version of Firebrand or The Desolation of Israel or Struggle and Surrender or whatever it is. We need that from you. And it's never going to happen if you don't get down and actually get into the mud and do the work here. And I know how it is. At every step of the process, you wish you were at a different one. When you're coming up with ideas, all you want to be doing is writing down and getting those words and letting it flow. When you're writing, all you want to do is say, man, I wish I could just have this out and start thinking about my next idea. And when you're editing, all you can think about is, oh man, I just want to go on to the next thing. I get how that goes. But that's not going to happen until you finish. It's not going to happen until you move on. Finish what you start, and then you can see what you've really got. I'm a big fan of taking a mediocre idea, putting outstanding work into it, and seeing if you can't make something great. This is Difference Makers. Been talking about how badly we need your book, my friend. You need to be working on this. Today we were talking about the writing process itself, and I want to remind you about ironworks.media, which is where you can find all of the books that I have written, especially the new one, which is called Firebrand, The Incendiary Life of a Nepali Christian. It's a missionary biography. I know you're going to love it. We've also got some other things there as well. We've got podcasts, videos, books, all manner of things, conferences that you can check out there. If you join our mailing list, you can learn about all the new stuff that's coming out at ironworks.media and download 2 free ebooks right away. And I hope that you'll pay attention and support us, what's going on. Pick up a copy of the new book. I know you'll enjoy it. If you want to find out more about that, about our church, you can go to calvarychapeltrustville.com. Now get out there and write your book. We need it. And go make a difference.